So I guess, good morning, and it is good that I actually can't see anybody from up here because most of our presentations about the pharmaceutical industry start with a health warning, which means that if we happen to reference product names and you happen to have a little emotional outburst of some sort, it lets us know what's wrong with you. So if I mention Viagra or risperidone, for example, you know what the first one is for. I heard some Twitters over here. Second one's for chronic schizophrenia, so I'm not so sure you want everybody to know that you might be suffering from that. But it does bring us to the core of the industry, and it's very interesting sitting here this morning and listening to other speakers talk about reputation and talk about stockholders and stakeholders and customers. This industry is extremely easy to get passionate about because right at the center of it are patients. And all of our trading, if you like, is very much on our reputation. I'm sure many of you, I know all of you have parents. Some may not, obviously no longer be with us, but aging parents and the aging population is a big issue for everyone, for all of us. I have kids myself, and I know as you hand a medicine or put a medicine or watch a doctor put an injection into your child, you want to know that that product is of the highest quality that can possibly be sourced anywhere in the world. And you want to make sure that it's going to improve the health of your child and not the opposite. So it's a very important industry from that perspective for all of us. So in the course of what I want to talk about in the session this morning is a little bit of history. So if I can get the technology to work here. History is important because there are some facts here that you may already be aware of. But when we talk about Ireland moving from here to prosperity, I think it's important for everybody to realize sort of the three numbers that I latch onto myself, which are 56, 25, and 1. There's around 56 billion of exports come out of the pharma industry every year in Ireland. That's the figure for 2011, as you can see on the screen. There are 25,000 people directly employed in the manufacturing companies that exist in Ireland, that operate in Ireland. And there's around $1 billion in corporate tax annually coming from the sector. So those three numbers alone put us, as you can see there, around 50% of the exports from the economy. So that's an important part of the Irish economy. So you ask yourself the question, when we talk about moving from here to prosperity and move to the extremes, do we want to do that with the industry front and center as it is today, or do we want to do that without the industry? And I hope you'll all agree that we want to do that with the industry, retaining perhaps the percentage, but growing the sales value of what we produce in Ireland. So it's a very important industry to our economy. And there has been, as Brian alluded to in his introduction there, a lot of debate, discussion about the patent cliff. And the patent cliff was a phenomena that came about, if you like, because there were a number of blockbusting drugs which were manufactured in Ireland that came off patent at the same time. But products coming off patent is not new to the pharmaceutical industry, and you'll see that in a later slide. The industry has always got to replenish its pipeline because it has a limited patent on the products. Once that patent expires, generics will move in and start to produce that product and offer it in the marketplace at a significantly lower price. And so the concept of products coming off patent is constant. It's not a new thing. What happened in the last couple of years were, as I say, a number of blockbusters that are produced in Ireland came off at the same time. And so we had that so-called cliff. What wasn't talked about is the new products that are coming through and the efforts that the industry is going to replenish itself in Ireland to increase its relevance in the global context and to make sure that we're increasing, if you like, the remit that Ireland has in the pharmaceutical industry. I think it's also important to point out that Brian's introduction mentioned that I have a global role, a responsibility for manufacturing large molecules, which are typically biologic products which are grown from a cell. I'm not going to go into a science lecture here. Small molecules are typically chemically synthesized, and large molecules are produced biologically. And that's a very new industry to Ireland, the biologic side of the pharma industry, which we're thankfully able to say that we're front and center of that globally as well. It's important to say that I'm one of many global leaders in this space who are based in Ireland and who grew up in Ireland in this industry. I'm in the industry around 20 years. Many of my colleagues are here in the audience, and they also have global responsibility, which is a testament to the leadership that has grown up and matured in this industry in Ireland and is now front and center of all the conversations around pharmaceuticals and where they're manufactured globally. Also, I think at the bottom half of the slide there, you can see the percentage of PhD researchers that we're currently employing in Ireland, and we absolutely want to see that growing. And I think it's also important to point to that replacement value of the sector. Over the last number of years, over the last 40, 50 years, there's been billions invested in Ireland in facilities. And coming on adjacent to that are the skill sets that it takes to design and build, construct those facilities. And a lot of those skills are now being exported in addition to the pharmaceuticals. The knowledge that goes with the industry is being exported. So in terms of the journey of success, obviously this started, the first company to establish in Ireland was back in the 50s. And I think it's important to put this into the context of going from here to prosperity. This isn't a quick win by any means. I think our Taoiseach mentioned some of the newer companies that come around and they grow from nothing to a global scale in maybe 5 years or 7 years. This industry is a lot slower to grow. It's also a lot slower to move, but we shouldn't be complacent about that because it can move. The policy of the IDA and the government going back into the 60s was extremely important in attracting the industry into Ireland. This is very much a knowledge-based industry. And we have seen many other locations in the world trying to replicate what we have here. And it's extremely difficult because it's knowledge-based. You can build a stainless steel factory somewhere or put the same stainless steel equipment into a factory anywhere in the world, but you truly need the people who understand how to manufacture it against all of the values that were talked about this morning. The employees really have to embrace the fact that some human being is going to take the product that you ultimately make. And we have seen, I'll talk about it here in a second maybe I'll talk about it right now. The quality record down there, we heard, and I listened this morning, interestingly, to people talk about less regulation and making it easier to do business. The pharma industry thrives on regulation and thrives on compliance. And the Irish industry, you can see there, we're one of the biggest exporters of pharmaceuticals, of medicines in the world. There is nowhere else in the world that produces more medicines than Ireland does. And when you think about that, the responsibility that goes with it to make sure that everybody that's taking one of those medicines is taking a high quality product. That responsibility sits on our shoulders, it sits on the shoulders of everybody working in any of the manufacturing plants in the country, but it also sits firmly on the shoulders of the Irish Medicines Board. And they have done a stellar job in making sure that the reputation of the pharmaceutical industry coming out of Ireland is up there at the very, very top. There was a time, certainly in my life, when the FDA were coming to your facility, and believe me, they come to some facility around the world every week. And there's always nervousness about the FDA coming in, because they have the power to prevent you from exporting your products into one of the biggest markets in the world if they decide that they don't like what they see in your facility. And so we would always have trepidation with the FDA coming into our facilities anywhere in the world. I can tell you globally now that most of those facilities operating in other jurisdictions dread the Irish Medicines Board coming in, because the expertise that they have and their understanding of what it takes to produce a high quality product has reached levels where they truly understand what they're talking about. They understand how to regulate that industry, how to make sure that the customers who are front and center of what we make are protected. And so that is something that, embracing compliance, embracing regulation, and working to drive it to standards that are unprecedented becomes a competitive advantage. And it's not a competitive advantage that you get overnight. So we would maybe buck the trend and say that you need to look at regulation and compliance as a competitive advantage, not something to try to shift. Because I think at the core of all of our businesses are human beings and human behavior. You heard Eamon talk about behaviors. I think all of us in our companies talk about employee behaviors. It's something that we know is extremely important. It's very hard to change it. And if we take away the measurement, human beings will, by nature, drift. And that drift would be detrimental to an industry like the pharma industry. So I really want to make that point that compliance can be a competitive advantage, and we'll see it becoming more and more important in other industries. The biopharma industry is, let's say, the next lease of life in this journey of success. Large molecules or biologics are extremely difficult to manufacture and extremely difficult to manufacture correctly. You either make the batch right or you lose it. In small molecule chemically synthesized products, you get an opportunity to rework under certain conditions your product if it doesn't meet specification the first time. With biologics, you don't. So it's an extremely difficult space to go into. We are now the most important location in the world for manufacturing biologics. So the most recent investment by J&J, the biggest investment J&J ever made globally, was made in Cork, in Janssen Biologics in Cork back in 2004, 2005. And again, underpinning the decision to bring that facility to Ireland was tax was in there, but believe me, it was way down the agenda. It was about talent, and it was about the ability to source in Ireland designers who could design the facility and constructors who could build the facility. These are very, very difficult facilities to build. And so not only have J&J located in Ireland, but you have Pfizer's, you have BioMarin recently bought one of the Pfizer facilities that Pfizer needed to divest because they acquired Wyeth. You know, I think if you looked at these slides probably 10 years ago, you would have seen that we had 14 of the top 16 and maybe 16 of the top 18, but we've all been buying each other over the years, so now it's down to 8 of the top 10. So you see a lot of consolidation of capacity going on in the world, and that obviously affects Ireland. But you've seen BioMarin come in to pick up a facility that not just was the facility of world-class standard, but the people that were in it, they wanted as well. They haven't put products in there yet, because this industry is not for the faint-hearted. But they've retained all of the resources that are in there, the human capital that's there, because that's the key to manufacturing high-quality products for this industry. So we've seen BioMarin come in, Alexion, Amgen, as I mentioned, Regeneron are opening a facility in Ireland. So it's, you know, we could talk for 10 minutes here about the patent cliff and the industry, and I've heard some commentary that the industry is, you know, finished. The pharma industry is a has-been. It absolutely is not a has-been, and if you leave this room with one message, it's that the pharmaceutical industry is at the center of the Irish economy. And for us to move from here to prosperity, we need to retain and grow that industry. And we're making success in that regard. Those 3 companies I just mentioned, Alexion, Regeneron, and BioMarin, are bringing biopharmaceuticals into Ireland to manufacture them here because of our reputation, because of the 40 years of history that's here and the knowledge that's here. And that brings us to let's say, some of the challenges that we have. Well, maybe I'll touch the roadmap before I get there. I did say I'd mention this.
Gerry, I'm just going to give you a time warning, if that's okay.
Perfect. Problem with this industry, we could talk about it all day. I could certainly talk about it all day. So let me move very quickly to one of our poster childs. I mentioned that this is not for the faint-hearted. You can see there that it takes around 20 years. The life cycle of a product is around 20 years. And very often the first 10 or 12 years of that is getting it onto the market. You've got to go through the identification of the molecule, bringing it through the preclinical stage to say, yeah, this thing looks like it's going to work in human beings, getting into phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials, and then going through the regulatory process to show that your product really does work and you get the approval to sell it in the markets. And we have to file dossiers of paper that, you know, there are significant volumes of paper that go to every agency in every jurisdiction in the world that you want a license to market that product in. So it's a huge regulatory burden, if you like, on the business. And then you have about 8 to 10 years to recover your cost of the first 12 years. We've very much been focused in the manufacturing stage, and in the early years of the pharma industry, we were in the pure manufacturing after launch. Part of our success has been to move back that continuum, to head back towards the clinical trial phase, and to get the value, the real value and the sustainability of the industry is back that pipeline. And it requires significant research and process development to be able to be relevant in that space. So we've been focusing our strategy for retaining and growing the industry on moving back from the traditional manufacturing into the development stage and then ultimately into the research stage. One of the metrics that we should be using in the 2020 timeframe would be how many of the global researchers are based in Ireland, as opposed to the global manufacturing heads are being based in Ireland, or the supply chain leads being based in Ireland. So thankfully, we're starting to see that, you know, one of the opportunities for us is in advanced manufacturing. And I'll talk in the next slide about some of the real opportunities that we see in the adjacencies of industries. But we truly want to move back in that direction. And investments by government in organizations like NIBRT, for example, are vitally important to our industry. It was interesting to see Patrick mention the solid-state pharmaceutical cluster that is a collaboration between all of the pharma companies in Ireland and academia based on an UL. That has global recognition in the industry as being vitally important and demonstrating our ability to develop processes, understand what we're doing, and make even more compliant products. Nibert in the biospace is vitally important to us, and each time you go to bring in another biopharmaceutical company, having an asset like Nibert to point to and say, we have a collaboration underway between academia and industry that can help you get your company started way faster in Ireland than anywhere else in the world, is a tremendous asset. And is actually being targeted by some of the other jurisdictions to try to position themselves in the same place as Ireland is as being one of the globally relevant locations for medicines. Some of the challenges then, and maybe more importantly, some of the opportunities. The challenges are no different to the challenges that many of the businesses in Ireland have. Competitiveness, you have to have it. And we're not satisfied with where we are today with respect to competitiveness. Our labour costs are too high. Maybe our productivity relative to those labour needs to move up. Waste, the cost of waste and waste handling, particularly in our industry, is a critical piece of infrastructure that's missing in Ireland, and legislation in Europe is going to prevent us from exporting our waste in the coming years. So we're going to have to deal with that, and we're going to have to deal with it cost effectively. And then energy charges and other utility charges. We heard the Minister talk about some of the likes of the investment in public services, etc. Irish Water needs to, as an example, I'm not going to get into the debate here, but we're looking to Irish Water to develop lower costs and higher service in that particular utility. And if it doesn't do that, then we're going to have a major issue in that utility alone. Energy is taking far too long for us to change the game on energy. Moving into that sustainable space, etc. We need to really accelerate what we're doing in that space. And then when I look at healthcare globally, this is one of the biggest opportunities we have and we see in our industry. We talk about pharmaceutical, that's the cure when you have a disease. You talk about healthcare, now you're talking about a much bigger issue in terms of global economies and our place and our role in that. When you think about unmet medical needs, we always think immediately of Alzheimer's. That's one of the products that are one of the disease states, the therapeutic areas that we're actively researching in. We've already spent several billions in trying to identify a cure for Alzheimer's or a treatment for Alzheimer's that delays its progression. And we have failed, and we've done that in collaboration with other companies. So it's a very, very difficult area to move into unmet medical needs. You also have the biggest issue in healthcare, which is affordability. And medicines are part of that, but also the whole adjacency with other components of healthcare, like food. Food and health go hand in hand. And we're looking to Food Health Ireland and Animal Health Ireland, for example, to see where we can collaborate with data sets to accelerate the agenda around research. And so we're looking much more closely at the adjacencies of other industries in Ireland to start making ourselves more relevant. The collaboration with MedTech is a very obvious one. Again, I could talk at that at length, but in the interest of time.
Right up against it now. So
no problem.
Come back to some of this in the conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Do you want to just give a quick wrap?
The quick wrap is that's our footprint in Ireland. Most of you will recognize your regions, your jurisdictions maybe, whatever phrase you want to use. It's embedded in pretty much every corner of Ireland to some degree. We need to continue to retain it and to grow it. So I'm sure there's lots of topics we can discuss, but I'll park it there for now. Thank you for listening.